A generation ago, working hard felt like a plan, not a guarantee, not a shortcut, a plan. People believed that if they showed up, worked hard, and stayed responsible, life would slowly move forward. Maybe not immediately, maybe not dramatically, but forward. That belief built neighborhoods, it built families, it built the middle class, and for a long time it seemed to work. Then something strange happened. The promise stayed the same, but the feeling changed. Today, millions of people are working, millions are earning, millions are trying, yet many of them feel stuck. Not broke, not unemployed, not hopeless, stuck. And that feeling has become so normal that most people do not even question it anymore. They just wake up, go to work, pay their bills, and quietly wonder why life still feels harder than it should. That is where Zeke Vance comes in. He is 29 years old, and on the morning of April 14th, 2026, he woke up with the same feeling he had been trying to ignore for years. No matter how hard he worked, life never seemed to get any easier. At 6:14 a.m., before his feet touched the floor, before he checked the weather, before he checked his messages, Zeke did what millions of people do every day. He checked his bank account, $2,381.42. He stared at the number for a few seconds, not because it was low, not because it was high, because somehow, after another month of working, it felt exactly the same. And that was the strange part. Zeke was not broke, he was not unemployed, he was not reckless. He had a full-time job, a decent salary, no gambling problem, no luxury addiction, no financial disaster. If you looked at his life from the outside, you would probably assume everything was fine. But from the inside, it never felt like progress. It felt like maintenance, like running on a treadmill that quietly increased its speed every year. And Zeke could not understand why, because he had done everything he was told to do: study, work, be responsible, stay out of trouble, save when possible, repeat. That was the plan. At least that is what he thought, and yet every year felt strangely similar to the one before it. Same stress, same calculations, same anxiety before opening his banking app. Same feeling that life was somehow getting more expensive faster than he was moving forward. The strange thing is that millions of people know exactly what that feeling feels like. Not because they are poor, not because they are failing, because something deeper changed, and most people never noticed it happening. They only noticed the feeling it left behind. A feeling that follows people into grocery stores, into gas stations, into apartment leases, into coffee shops, into late night banking apps. A feeling that whispers the same question over and over again. Why am I working so hard and still not getting ahead? For Zeke, that question had been getting louder every year, but that morning felt different, because later that day, something small was about to happen. Something that would force him to compare his life to his father's life at exactly the same age. And once he saw the difference, he would never be able to unsee it. By 7:03 a.m., Zeke was sitting in traffic. The same highway, the same commute, the same 15-minute podcast pretending to explain how to become successful. Red lights, brake lights, billboards, coffee, repeat. Most mornings felt identical, but today his phone buzzed. It was a message from his father. Nothing important, just an old photo, a faded picture from 1997. His father standing beside a small house, one story, nothing luxurious, nothing impressive, just a house. Zeke looked at the photo for a few seconds. Then he looked at the year. His father was 29 years old, the exact age Zeke was now. That should have been a meaningless detail, but it was not, because suddenly a question entered his mind. How? How did his father own a house at 29? Because Zeke knew something strange. At 29, his father was making less money than he was, a lot less. Adjusted for inflation, Zeke earned more. He worked with better technology. He had access to more information, more opportunities, more education, more everything. So why did it feel like his father had been moving faster? The question followed him all morning, through traffic, through emails, through meetings, through lunch, and the more he thought about it, the stranger it became. Because his father was not rich, his father was not some investing genius, his father was not a business owner, he was not lucky, he was ordinary. And somehow that was exactly what made it confusing, because ordinary used to seem enough. At lunch, Zeke called him. Dad, can I ask you something? Sure. How did you buy a house at 29? His father laughed, not because it was a stupid question, because nobody had asked him that before. I do not know, he said. I just did. That answer irritated Zeke immediately, because that is how older generations always describe things, as if the entire thing happened naturally, as if life simply unfolded. But for Zeke, nothing felt natural. Everything felt calculated, planned, budgeted, optimized, delayed, measured, compared, and still somehow expensive. His father continued, I was not thinking about wealth. I was not trying to get ahead. I was just trying to build a life. Build a life. The phrase stayed in Zeke's head, because without realizing it, he had spent years trying to afford life, not build one. And maybe that was the first clue. Maybe the question was not, why is Zeke failing? Maybe the question was, what changed between the world his father entered and the world Zeke entered? Because somewhere between those two generations, something happened. Something invisible. Something that changed how money feels, how work feels, how progress feels. And before Zeke got home that night, he was about to discover what it was. That night, after the call with his father, Zeke could not stop thinking about one sentence. I was just trying to build a life. Build a life. The phrase sounded simple, almost boring. But the more he thought about it, the stranger it became. Because somewhere along the way, life stopped feeling like something people built and started feeling like something people chased. The next morning, Zeke was sitting at a coffee shop before work. Nothing unusual, just coffee. A few emails, a few minutes before his shift. Then he made the same mistake millions of people make every day. He opened Instagram. 30 seconds later, his mood had changed. Someone his age was in Bali. Someone his age had just bought a house. Someone his age was driving a new BMW. Someone his age had launched a business. Someone his age had six-pack abs. Someone his age seemed to have everything figured out. And just like that, without a single word being spoken, his own life felt smaller. The strange thing is that nothing in Zeke's life had changed. His bank account was the same. His job was the same. His future was the same. The only thing that changed was who he was comparing himself to. And that is where the real story begins. Because for most of human history, people compared themselves to a tribe. Maybe 50 people, maybe 100, maybe 150. Your neighbors, your cousins, your friends, the people around you. That was the entire scoreboard. But Zeke was not competing against 150 people. He was competing against the internet. Before finishing his coffee, he had compared himself to thousands of lives. Thousands. His brain never evolved for that. No brain did. Anthropologists believe human beings evolved in small groups where status was local. If you were respected, you could see it. If you were successful, you could feel it. If you were improving, the people around you noticed. Today, status became global, and the human brain never got the update. That is why something strange happens. People make more money and feel poorer. People improve their lives and feel behind. People achieve goals and immediately replace them with bigger ones. Not because they are ungrateful, because comparison changed. The target keeps moving, and every time the target moves, progress feels smaller. That is when Zeke realized something. His father was not only living in a different economy, he was living in a different psychological environment. His father did not wake up every morning and compare himself to millionaires. His father did not compare his apartment to influencers. His father did not compare his vacations to celebrities. His father did not carry the entire world's scoreboard inside his pocket. Zeke did. And so did everyone else. For the first time, the problem started making sense. Maybe people were not only exhausted from working, maybe they were exhausted from comparing. And if that was true, then the real reason progress felt invisible was not just money, it was attention. Because every day, millions of people were measuring their lives against a finish line that moved faster than they could run. And Zeke was one of them. But he still had not found the whole answer, because comparison explained the feeling, not the math. And the math was about to get much worse. For a few days, Zeke could not stop thinking about it. Maybe comparison was part of the problem. Maybe carrying the entire world's scoreboard in his pocket every day was making him feel behind. But deep down, he knew that was not the whole answer, because comparison could not explain rent. Comparison could not explain groceries. Comparison could not explain why every raise seemed to disappear before he could even feel it. A week later, Zeke got good news. His company announced a raise, nothing life-changing, but enough to matter. For the first time in months, he felt relief. Not excitement. Relief. The kind of relief people feel when they think they are finally catching up. That night, he opened his banking app and did the math. More income, more breathing room, more progress. At least that was the plan. But something strange happened. 3 months passed, then 6, then 9, and somehow the feeling came back. The same pressure, the same calculations, the same anxiety, the same question. If I am making more money now, why does life not feel any easier? That is when Zeke discovered something almost everyone learns eventually. The modern world has a strange habit. Every time your income grows, something else grows with it. Rent, insurance, food, subscriptions, expectations, convenience, lifestyle. The finish line moves. And because it moves gradually, most people never notice it happening. They only notice the feeling that they are running harder than before without creating much distance. One Saturday afternoon, Zeke sat down and compared his expenses from 5 years earlier. The results shocked him. He was not living luxuriously, not even close. No private jets, no designer watches, no mansion, no crazy spending, just ordinary life, a slightly better apartment, a newer phone, a few subscriptions, more delivery apps, a nicer car, small upgrades, reasonable upgrades, normal upgrades, and that is what made it dangerous, because none of them felt like a mistake. Each decision made sense by itself, but together, they quietly consumed the freedom he thought his raises were creating. That is when he realized something important. Most people do not spend their way into financial stress overnight. They drift into it, one upgrade at a time, one convenience at a time, one monthly payment at a time, one reward at a time, until eventually their lifestyle grows at the same speed as their income. And when that happens, the raise disappears. Not mathematically, psychologically, because the purpose of money is not just to increase numbers. It is supposed to increase freedom, and freedom was exactly what Zeke felt he was not getting. The strange thing is that previous generations experienced raises differently. A raise often meant progress. Today, a raise often feels like permission to stay where you already are, to keep up with costs, to maintain your position, to avoid falling backward, and that is a completely different emotional experience. For the first time, Zeke started seeing the real problem. It was not laziness, it was not failure, it was not a lack of discipline, it was something much harder to notice. The game itself had changed. People were still using the old map, but the landscape looked completely different. And once Zeke understood that, another question appeared. If working harder was not enough anymore, then what actually moves people forward? A few weeks later, Zeke was sitting alone in his apartment. No podcast, no music, no television, just silence. And for the first time in years, he was not thinking about his next paycheck. He was thinking about his father. The more he compared their lives, the more he realized something. His father was not trying to get ahead. That sounds strange, but it is true. His father was not trying to become wealthy. He was not trying to optimize every decision. He was not trying to build passive income. He was not trying to escape the rat race, he was trying to build a life. And somehow, those are not the same thing. That is when Zeke finally understood what had been bothering him. For years, he thought he was running toward something, a better future, more security, more freedom. But in reality, most of his energy was being spent trying not to fall backward, trying to keep up with costs, trying to keep up with expectations, trying to keep up with a world that kept moving the finish line. And that is a completely different game, because when you are building something, progress feels visible. When you are defending something, progress feels invisible. That is why so many people feel stuck today. Not because they are not moving, because most of their movement is being used to maintain position, to stay where they are, to avoid slipping backward. And psychologically, that feels very different from growth. That is why people can earn more money than ever and still feel behind. That is why raises often feel smaller than expected. That is why success feels farther away than it should. Because people are not measuring effort, they are measuring distance. And the distance keeps changing. Suddenly, everything made sense. The comparison, the pressure, the frustration, the feeling that progress had disappeared. Progress had not disappeared. The cost of maintaining a normal life had simply grown faster than most people realized. Then Zeke realized something even stranger. He was making more money than his father did at the same age. A lot more. He had better technology, better tools, better information, better opportunities. Yet somehow his father had felt more secure. Not because his father was rich, not because his father had some secret, and not because life was perfect, because security and income are not the same thing. Somewhere along the way, people started confusing the two. The modern world became very good at helping people earn more, but not necessarily feel safer, not necessarily feel freer, not necessarily feel ahead. And maybe that is why so many people feel exhausted. They are chasing a feeling using a number, trying to solve a psychological problem with a financial metric, trying to create security through endless growth. And for many people, that finish line never arrives. That is when Zeke stopped asking, "Why am I working so hard and still not getting ahead?" and started asking, "What am I actually trying to get ahead of?" That question changed everything, because not every race is worth running. Not every expectation is worth carrying. Not every upgrade is worth chasing. And not every version of success belongs to you. The strange thing about modern life is that many people spend years climbing a ladder without ever asking who put it there. Zeke finally did. And for the first time in a very long time, the pressure started making sense. Not because life became easier, not because money suddenly appeared, but because he finally understood the game he was playing. And sometimes, understanding the game is the first real step forward. That night, before going to sleep, Zeke checked his bank account one last time. The number had not changed much. His rent was still there. His bills were still there. His responsibilities were still there. Nothing in his life had magically improved, but something important had changed. For the first time, he stopped believing the problem was him, because the truth was never that people suddenly became lazy, or irresponsible, or bad with money. The truth is that millions of people are trying to win a game whose rules quietly changed. They are working harder, comparing more, paying more, and carrying more pressure than the generations before them. Yet they keep blaming themselves when progress feels invisible. But invisible does not mean non-existent. Sometimes you are not standing still. Sometimes you are using all your energy just to hold your ground. And maybe that is why so many people feel stuck today, not because they are failing, but because they are measuring themselves against a finish line that keeps moving. A generation ago, working hard felt like a plan. Today, for millions of people, it feels more like survival, and maybe the first step toward getting ahead is understanding why. Because once you understand the game, you can finally decide whether it is a game worth playing at all.